This is the best base for MMA, and it isn't actually wrestling. Nah, I'm joking. It actually is wrestling, but let me explain. Why does everyone say that wrestling is such a dominant base for MMA? People don't say that for nothing, and I have a little bit of bias because I first started with wrestling, but wrestling has actually helped me a lot. Not with just like starting off with jiu-jitsu, which, you know, wrestling has helped me a lot with that, but it's also just helped me out with learning mixed martial arts. And I want to go through why is wrestling such a dominant base. Now you have to understand one thing. MMA is still a new sport. I mean, MMA has been around for maybe 20, 30 years. Obviously, it's probably been around for longer because there's been like different forms of MMA. But in general, MMA hasn't really been there for that long. Because MMA is such a new sport, I feel like people have a harder time dealing with specific styles, including wrestling. So for example, just for some context, I have only high school wrestling that I started off with before I started to do mixed martial arts. So pretty much I wrestled all throughout high school. I was not really that good. I was kind of shit, but somehow for some reason it's been able to help me out, like when I'm doing jiu-jitsu or when I'm sparring in MMA, and I'm able to take down people actually pretty easily. And I think it's because a lot of people don't really know how to defend against wrestlers for some weird reason. And I get it. I mean, wrestling is, you know, pretty hard to start off with, and I think it's also hard to defend against wrestling. For me, when I first started wrestling was incredibly difficult. But through just developing a basic wrestling base, it's been able to help me out a lot. So what makes wrestling so dominant in MMA? Well, first off, wrestlers are usually able to dictate where the fight goes. So with a wrestler, they can either strike or they can take you down at will. And we've seen this in the UFC time and time again. For example, we've seen Merab versus, Sean O'Malley, where Merab just for 5 rounds straight just dictated the fight, took him down, played around with him, toyed with him. We've also seen that with Belal versus Leon Edwards, where Belal didn't just take him down, but he was also landing with him on the feet. And it's because a lot of the MMA fighters that go up against people with a heavy wrestling style, they have to watch out for the takedown threat. So it makes it just so much harder to be able to actually like go in on a wrestler and strike with them, because they can get taken down pretty easily. And again, it comes back to, in my opinion, I think a lot of MMA fighters just aren't able to defend against wrestling well. They don't really have the understanding of wrestling, which requires, in my opinion, a lot of time to understand. Also, they have dominant top control. So a perfect example of that is Khabib, where Khabib would literally take people's souls on the ground. He would take down people and just, you know, for 5 minutes, just work on the ground and pound, going crazy. And that shit tires the person on the ground, especially when they're trying to get back up, but they just literally cannot. That actually happened with someone in my gym who, you know, has a couple years of mixed martial arts experience, and he went up against this guy, I think last week, that has only had like one MMA fight, but has been pretty much wrestling his whole life. And the whole fight was literally just the kid taking him down, ground and pound, and just the kid could not get back up. And yeah, for my friend, it wasn't really the best of nights, you know, being just taken down at will and ground and pounded. Bro, it takes a lot of confidence out of a fighter. Also, wrestlers are harder to submit. So, I mean, we've seen like with wrestling versus BJJ, I think my friend has said it the best, that wrestling usually beats BJJ 6 out of 10 times. So a BJJ guy could probably get a submission on a wrestler, you know, once a while. But the thing is, because a wrestler understands grappling so well, it's so hard to take them down. It's hard to, you know, sweep them, and hard to get like a rear naked choke or try to get it like an arm triangle choke when they have just such thick necks. But also, they're just able to defend against submissions really easily. And lastly, I think it just comes down to the work ethic of a lot of wrestlers. So back in high school, we used to compete like every freaking week. There are BJJ guys that I know the struggle with just like competing once a month, which is pretty crazy because I mean, we were competing weekly at tournaments, at duels, at quads. So we were getting matches every single week. And we were working hard, dude. I mean, wrestling practice, in my opinion, is way harder than any mixed martial arts practice. So like any mixed martial arts gym's practice, I genuinely think that wrestling is way harder. And that's why, like, for me, starting, you know, jiu-jitsu and kickboxing and those things, those martial arts were not as hard as wrestling, because again, wrestling, we were just working in the gym 24/7, because the wrestling practices are just way more intense. It really helps build that work ethic that will take you off in your mixed martial arts journey. So because I've given you a couple reasons as to why wrestling is such a good base, I think you should honestly work on your wrestling. So what I would do, right, if you're a high schooler, like if you're someone below the age of 18, if you're in like middle school or high school, I doubt I have any middle schoolers watching this video, but if you're in high school, I would seriously wrestle in high school, because high school wrestling will take you a long way in mixed martial arts. But if you're someone that maybe is out of high school, you know, you're an adult like me, and you've never started a martial art before, I would highly recommend you join a jiu-jitsu gym, but a jiu-jitsu gym that specifically emphasizes wrestling. So for example, like I would join a gym where maybe the head coach was like a former wrestler, like he, you know, started with wrestling. That's the type of gym that I would personally join and just build that base for wrestling. Even if you join a mixed martial arts gym, like I would try to join a mixed martial arts gym where there are wrestlers, and I would just emphasize working on your wrestling and jiu-jitsu, because that shit will seriously help you out in your mixed martial arts journey. If you enjoy content like this, make sure to like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments below what type of video you want to see next. And remember, my boys, stay active, stay busy, and most of all, stay hungry.